So you just got yourself a Kraton 8S EXB and you're wondering what electronics to use in this thing to get some decent performance out of it. In this video, I'm going to be showing you what I've chosen. These are my preferred electronics. You can use them on the 8S roller that you see here, or even an old RTR that needs a bit of a revamp. Now, of course, when it comes to electronics for a truck like this, there is an abundance of different options, everything from motors, ESCs, steering servos, and of course, radios. And then, of course, you've got a variety of different gearing that you can go with based on the motor size and KV as well. This is just my preferred setup. For those of you out there who just want, as basic as a plug and play type of system, something that's very easy to do. This is probably one of my preferred choices because it's pretty affordable. It's readily available, at least here in Australia, albeit that there are a couple of things you may need to wait for. And some of this stuff you can actually get at local hobby shops as well. So let's start off with the radio. As I said, there's a variety of different options and brands and functions and things that you can get. If you just want to get something that's going to be reliable, it's going to give you good range, and you're not going to lose control of this 15-kilogram monster, doing close to 100 kilometers an hour, smacking some kid's leg that's at the park playing with his puppy. You probably want something reliable. I wouldn't go putting, a $30 or $50 radio in something like this. You want something that's at least brand name. This one here has got the Futaba 3PV hooked up to it. I've been using one of these for years and it's been very, very good. It does have some limited functions here on the menu, but it has everything that the average person's going to need. It's got good range, good reliability. It can run on a rechargeable battery pack, like a life pack if you want to. It's got a nice drop down wheel. It feels really, really good in the hand. And it's not super big or heavy. So this is something that, for under 200 bucks here in Australia is actually very, very good. And that's what we're using with this particular car. But again, using that rule of getting something that's good, depending on your budget and what part of the world you're in, you might opt for something else, but I do recommend getting something reliable for this car. All right, so taking the body off, and we're gonna show you the internals here real quick, and I'm gonna show you some of the stuff that I've done and changed on this car. So you can see my two batteries here. You can see our ESC and our motor. Now the motor is a Leopard motor. It is a 1050 kV and it measures in at 58 millimeters diameter by 113 millimeters long. It's an absolute monster of a motor. It's got heaps of power. And if you want to see this guy running on my truck, which is the ready to run version, check the video description. I'll have links in there to some of those videos and you can see the type of performance that you're going to get out of this type of motor. It's an absolute animal. This thing will do standing backflips, no problem at all on 8S. Now, the ESC here is a Hobby Wing Max 5 ESC, which is a 200 ampere. This one here is branded Leopard because this combo came together. Now, the only catch with this combo is that the motor wires are quite thick and the connectors they use, I think it's like an 8mm. The connectors for the ESC is actually like a 6mm. So you can't run the cables directly into the ESC. Plus, I don't think they'd be long enough anyway. But the ESC does come with its own cables, and you've got the 6mm bullets already mounted at one end, and then you've got the blunt end at the other side. So what I've done is I've basically just cut them to size. The motor comes with the spare set of connectors that you can actually solder on. I soldered them on so you can see the joint just here, which is probably not really going to be an issue because the connectors are so big. And then of course that runs to the ESC running their 6 or 6.5mm size of bullets that they use there. I've got some nice wire management here. I've managed to separate the cables so it looks all nice and pretty. I've tied them down to the bottom brace, but you can tie them up to the top brace or work out your own wire management however you want to do it. The ESC comes with this massive 8-gauge wire, which is absolutely awesome. But it does create a bit of a problem if you're planning to using connectors like EC5s, for example, where the cable has to go through the connector. This might be a bit of a problem because it won't actually fit inside an EC5. So something to keep in mind if you're going to be chopping out the XT150s because it does come with XT150s already pre-installed, and running your own type of connector. Make sure that you can, you know, run this cable. Worst case scenario, you can probably splice in a thinner cable, so something like what I'm using on these batteries here, like a 10 gauge or something like that, 12 gauge, something that just fits inside that connector. Splice in a little length, and then you can do your own type of connector on the end if you want to use EC5s or whatever. So it's a little bit of mucking around, but if you stick to something like an XT150, you're pretty much set to go. I think the only thing I needed to do was change out this plug here to a female, because they both came as male out of the box. So I had 2 male plugs out of the ESC, and I run my XT150s with 1 male, 1 female. This means that I've got a male here on my battery in the black, and I've got a female here in the red on the battery. So that means I can connect these to each other and run them in series. So I only have 3 connection points. It minimizes resistance, really nice and clean. I don't need adapters or Y leads or anything like that. It's very straightforward, just plugs in and away you go. So that's the entire setup. The servo is a Savox servo. I'll have the number and specs up on screen, and of course I'll put links in the video description for you to check out as well. This is a 40 kilogram servo, which is more than enough for this particular truck. Of course you can get stronger, you can spend more, you might even be able to spend less as well. But for what it is, this is an excellent servo which should do the job just fine. And then of course we've got our batteries. I'm using CNHL here, but you can use whatever preferred brand of battery you want to use. That's entirely up to you. Just use something decent, and ideally you want to stick with a hard case. Soft case will be okay, but just be mindful that soft cases on a big heavy truck like this, when you're doing massive jumps and you know, stuff like that, the soft cases, they might get a little bit damaged. On lighter trucks, they're not such a big deal, but on a heavy truck, you probably want to stick with a hard case, or at least work out a way to protect those soft cases, maybe wrap them in foam or some silicone sleeves or something like that, so that they don't get too banged up. Now, as far as gearing goes, this is important, because gearing, you want to swap out the stock spur. So the stock spur is actually this one here, which is a 46, I think, from memory. And then they give you a 39, and the 39 is what I've actually installed. Now in my truck, I'm actually running, I think I'm running a 39-34. Now I'm using a 34 tooth pinion because it's actually the spool out of my Limitless. And to be honest, it's probably still a little bit high. I probably should go to like a 32, or maybe 31, maybe even a 30, to be honest with you. In this one here, we're actually running a 30 tooth, and it actually works perfect, at least from the basic testing that I've done with this truck. As you can see, it's still brand new, it hasn't been off-road as of yet, but it's got plenty of power, plenty of speed. It'll probably still do standing backflips just like mine does. Yeah, with this 30 tooth, it's gonna keep temperatures at bay a little bit. It's not gonna be super wild, but if you wanna see what the 34 tooth does with this motor and a Max 5, again, check the video description. I'll have a link in there to my videos where you can see my ready to run going at it. The other tip I will give you as well is just in regards to these motor mount screws. The stock ones that they give you are absolute rubbish. So you probably want to run some aftermarket ones. Get some good quality ones. They're an M4 size. I think they're about close to 30 mil, 25, 30 mil long, something like that. And these particular ones are a socket head. They use a 3mm hex, so it's unlikely to strip. I did use a washer just to make sure that they don't, damage my motor mount too much. They spread the load out a little bit. These are fantastic. I highly recommend you swap these out because you will likely strip out the stock screws on the motor mount. There is another one that goes underneath. That one, unfortunately, you will need to use the stock screw, because unless you can find an aftermarket one that can fit between the chassis and the mounting plate. But I used the stock one. I just didn't really over tighten it. And these ones here are actually taking the brunt of the load. So I've really cranked on these and used some Loctite. These should be totally fine. I've got the same setup in my truck and it works no problem at all. And that's really about it. There's no mods done to this truck. I haven't changed out the center diff fluid. I've left everything as stock. I am running silicone earplugs in my truck, but we'll see how this one goes. Maybe it needs it, maybe it doesn't. Maybe the guy that's lent me the truck will want to do that. So who knows, maybe this will come back to the workbench, and you may see another video of me sort of pulling out that center diff and working on replacing the oil that's in there. But aside from that, that pretty much wraps up this video. Hopefully you guys got something out of it. If you're fairly new to the hobby and you wanted to know what electronics to use in this, this is my setup. Also, punch setting on the ESC, before I forget, I've cranked mine up to 4 out of 5. I didn't go all the way out to 5. I'm going to leave it at 4 because I think it's plenty for this truck, but we'll see what the owner says. He might want to go a bit wilder, or he maybe want to tame it down a little bit. But that's it from me. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments down below. Thank you all very much for watching. Again, don't forget to check out the video description. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. There's a lot more content to come. And of course, hit that like button because it really helps me out. Thank you again, and I'll speak to you all next time.